Okay, so I've been kind of busy the past few days, but I took some time tonight and I was doing some research. I brought out my artifacts from that Central Texas site, the one that I'm calling CTX-01 in my videos. And I put them in chronological order from the oldest down here to the most recent up there. And there's a couple in here that I had labeled as something I'm going to change, or I'm just going to remove the label and not guess as to what it is or what they are. I don't have labels on all these, but I did label some of them so I can, arrange them accordingly. So I'm just going to remove some of the labels I put on here. I call this one a Uvalde. This is just fingernail polish remover, and this is just Sharpie or something like that. It's the little penguin Sharpie. I'm going to put these in the most recent category up there. I don't even know I have no idea what that is. It could be old. It could be down here with the old stuff, but I'll just put it up there. And this one I thought was a Merrill point, which is pretty old. It's early archaic, but I was looking at the book and a couple other places, and the straight sides, to me, takes it out of that category and puts it up here with the Frio. So this may be a Frio variant, but I'll just leave it unlabeled and put it up here. Now this up here, this is late archaic or transitional archaic, one of those two. Down here, we got the early archaic. So there's a span of about 6,000 years between the points down here and the points up there. So 6,000 years, and I didn't realize the site had that range in it. So now it's a little more difficult for me to do the narrowing down of the cultures. There's several cultures represented on this one site, which I think is fairly typical, right, for these sites here. Anyway, so I got Martindale, Merrill. I do think this one is a Merrill, and Uvalde and Laguna. These are all early archaic. Now I wrote some notes down. Early archaic. There's several different ways to separate these time periods depending on what area of Texas you're talking about. In the lower Pecos, the dates go something like this. 7,000 to 4,000 is the early archaic. Middle is 4,000 to 500 BC. Late is 500 to 0. I put a question mark because I wasn't sure exactly where the cutoff date between the transitional archaic and the late archaic is in the lower Pecos. So I just put 0 just to make it even, or nice and even. Anyway, the approximate dates for the overall state. Early archaic is 6,000 BC to 3,000 or 3,100 BC. So there's 3,000 years here in the early archaic. That's a long period of time. That's a long time span. Same with that, 3,000 years of early archaic. About 2,000 years in the middle archaic. About 1,300 years in the late archaic, and maybe 1,000 years up here with transitional. So these time periods get shorter and shorter as they get more recent, right? So I have a lot of paternalis pieces that have been loaned to me, and I still haven't done a full study of them. I'm going to do some measurements on the hafting areas. I think that'd be the most productive. For one, I don't have all the complete points. I have mostly bases, so the hafting area for me is going to be easiest, right? And number two, I'm doing a lot of hafting lately, experimenting with hafting and figuring out how these things actually get hafted into pieces of wood. Which brings me to the corner tang that I made recently. I did take this down here. I strengthened this edge and I chipped away at it, and I ran some more thinning flakes on this side. So it's a little bit more flat now, or even. I tried running another flake here. I think I did another flake there and caused an even steeper step. So I took the abrading stone and I just ground down this lump of concrete here. The wrapping is kind of obscuring the rest of the blade. I didn't do too much on this side. Most of my retouch and blade thinning is from the midpoint to this end here. Anyway, I put a lanyard on it. This is just a loop of leather, I just cut out of a hide. You can cut out from the middle of a hide a loop or a circle, right? And there's no knot in it. It's just a loop. And then I just stuck it on here and cinched it tight and made sure it was fairly snug on my wrist as a lanyard. And I think I can use it pretty much all day like this as a butchering tool. The lanyard gives you a little bit of leverage to do cutting, but cutting meat's not an intensive high strength requirement activity. It's just tedious, and getting in around the joints and inside the tissue and around the bones is going to require a nice tip on it. So I think that's why they had the tip designed this way. And also for skinning, to penetrate the hide at first and then skin it out. I think that's useful to have that tip on there like that. Now, I don't think I redid some of this too just to get it sharper. I'm not sure if that tip is actually an accurate reproduction. But anyway, I'm going to start using this when I'm barbecuing and see how it works on actual meat. And I might film some of that. But anyway, this is what I got so far. I ground down the edge here and here on the corners because it felt like it was irritating me when I was just experimenting with it earlier and seeing if this is comfortable for a butcher knife. And it's not too bad. It would be better with a handle like a modern knife, but this is much easier maintenance and much easier to construct. Just wrap part of the blade and put a lanyard on it and it's good to go. All right. And if this leather gets covered with fat and blood and stuff, this can be washed out. It's not very sanitary, right? But if you cook the meat, then you don't have to worry about it. All right. So getting back to this, so the pet analysis here, right? Now, I'm doing a lot of thinking, and I'm not sure if I'm going to get into this too much more. Thinking about the heat treating issue. I did write some notes here about heat treating, and at least with chalcedony, you're going to have a loss of what they call silanol when you heat treat it. There's a chemical reaction, right, where you have silica, oxygen, and hydrogen combined in the stone, right? Well, when you add heat, it changes the stone. You have a chemical reaction that's written out like this, and you end up with silicon and oxygen recombined and H2O as a side product. So it actually expels water out when you heat treat it. And with chalcedony, it starts at about 200 centigrade or 400 degrees Fahrenheit. All right. Now I know that not all these heat treatable stones start this reaction at 400. I think some start much lower than this Fahrenheit. I think I have a lot of stones that start at 300, where there's a visible alteration or a significant alteration in properties. Okay, so the main takeaways here from my notes is it expels water when you heat treat, recombines silica and oxygen. It takes less than 50 minutes to transform, and it makes the material harder and easier to flake. Okay. Now, as far as picking up an artifact in a laboratory and testing it for whether or not that transformation has taken place, I don't know the name of the test or what kind of tests there are, but there are ways to check that. All right. I think X-rays and ultraviolet light and stuff like that can be used to compare the structures of the crystals. Now, it probably depends on the type of stone as well. But when I talk to a lot of people about heat treating, they don't have a scientific explanation for what they're talking about. Usually, they're not laboratory workers who have done heat treat analysis on artifacts and to see if that transformation has taken place, the one I was talking about here. It actually transforms the stone. It recombines the silica and oxygen within the stone. I haven't talked to anyone who has conducted tests like that, and I should probably go down one of these days to the TARL, Texas Archaeological Research Laboratory, and see what I can find out. Who can I contact there to get actual tests on these that put the issue to rest, right? Most of the guys I talk to have just been in the field a long time with experience with artifacts and digging up artifacts, and they just say they know by look. It just looks raw or looks heated. And they've been doing it for 15, 20, 30, 40, sometimes 50 years, and they know just by looking. And I don't know about that method of thinking. It almost makes me think that if I look at these artifacts for 15 years, then I'll be able to tell which ones are heated and which ones are not. That doesn't make any sense to me. But anyway, I won't do much more of that. I'll just work the material the way I want to work the material. And then we'll see later on what the actual scientific tests say. Now, there's papers published on this kind of stuff. I didn't write down the sources. Yeah, a Google search will bring you to Scientific American and other sources, but in order to get those papers, it costs about $30 to $50 for each paper. I don't have that kind of money right now. I would need to download 3 or 4 papers tonight in order to get a good handle on the scientific testing on heat treatment. Some of the testing is not analysis on on finding an artifact on a site and then testing the artifact. A lot of these tests are with stone nodules that they've broken flakes off, and they compare the raw properties to the properties of stone that they heat treat in the laboratory. So they know it's heat treated. They're just comparing properties. Half those research papers deal with that sort of testing, which is not the kind of testing I'm wanting. I'm wanting the actual artifacts being tested for heat treatment. Okay, and that those tests do exist. Okay, I just can't spend the money right now on getting the scientific information on it. Okay. So that's it. That's what I was doing tonight. Trying to get back into this. I'm going to try to do a lot of different things. I do want to knap some more big blades. It seems to be a very highly entertaining thing on the internet. So I'm tempted to do more of those, but I don't like doing large blades because it's nerve-wracking for me. But I probably should. All right. And the other things I want to do is I've been receiving boxes of rocks, and I want to knap those rocks and finish out the rock challenges. Okay, so what else? This is the main source I use for grouping these according to their ages. So the Montels are up here with that's a Marshall, Lang, and Castroville. These are Pedernales. They're in the same time period as Nolan, Lahita, Tortugas, Kinney. This is a Tortugas, that's a Kinney. These are Nolan points, these are Pedernales. These look like Baker or Gower or some of, they don't look like Pedernales points to me, so I kind of separated these out. And these look like Jetta points to me, which are older. They're in the early Archaic, but they may all be Pedernales variants. But these look like Jetta down here to me, which are much older than Pedernales. There's like 1 or 2,000 years difference between these two types. So I'm kind of guessing on those. All right, so I have mostly Montels, right? I got a variety of them, and they're all, at least these are very thin. Everything else varies. When you get down here to the Martindale, Uvalde, and Merrill, they're kind of thick. But anyway, some of the best points that I've seen, some of the best quality and meticulous work are on these Martindales, early Archaic. And I do have some Frios in another collection that are very, very well made as well. So the whole, I can't really tell you that the flaking and the quality of workmanship is different between these. It varies from very precise and very symmetrical and well made down here in the early Archaic, all the way through up until the transitional Archaic or more recent points. So I can't say that there's certain flaking patterns down here that are different than up here. It's all mixed together. Some are well made, some are not. Some have bevels and twists and stuff, some do not. It's all variable. I think this is a Nolan, but Nolan and Pandale are very similar. It's hard for me to tell exactly what these are. Anyway, sometimes I just sit here and look at my artifacts. But I did want to get these in chronological order. Okay. So the next series of videos is going to be, I'm going to try to do more knappings instead of these discussion videos, but I did want to put out a short one. I was going to do this yesterday, but I got busy yesterday on Father's Day. So happy Father's Day, everybody, and I'll make the next video soon. All right.